Sharing how to make these doily ghosts. Last year I shared how to make cheesecloth ghosts, and it's a project I absolutely loved. They turned out so cute, and I pulled them all out again to decorate for Halloween this year. This is the same project but using vintage doilies instead of the cheesecloth. I love the extra texture and daintiness the lace gives the ghosts. If you've got a drawer full of old doilies that you're not sure what to do with, because really, what are we doing with doilies anymore? This is a great project for them. And it's not permanent either, so you can wash them out and get your doilies back after Halloween. As a reminder, here's what the regular cheesecloth ghosts look like and what we're looking to recreate, but vintage doily style. To start, I got a bunch of vintage doilies, mostly from my mom and Kate, although I did have a few that I thrifted as well. The best shape to use is square or round for this. The doilies will need to drape over something to create the ghost shape. I used a variety of jars and bottles and some other random objects I found around the house, like a candlestick. And they'll need to be round on top to create the head shape, so I topped the jars with foam balls, round wood balls, and even water balloons. I like water balloons because they're small. Then I covered each of the jars with plastic wrap. This just helps to keep the glue mixture from covering everything. I set my ghosts on a cutting board and cookie sheet to dry, and I also covered those. Next, I made a mixture of Mod Podge and water. It's about 2 parts of the Mod Podge to 1 part water. I don't measure, I just eyeball it. You just want it to be a watery glue mixture, but with a good amount of glue. I started stirring mine with a skewer, which apparently is how I did it last year, but that was annoying, so I switched to a paintbrush and it was much easier to stir with. Then I took a doily and dipped it into the mixture, making sure it was completely saturated. Wring out the excess mixture so it's not dripping and drape it over the ball and jar. I also recommend remembering to remove your rings before doing this, as your hands are going to get pretty messy doing it. If you want the doilies to be able to stand on their own, you should make sure some of the doily pools around the bottom of the jar. This means you'll need to be sure your jar is the right height, not too tall, so the doily can do this. Arrange it so it's even and looks how you'll want it to look when it's dry. You'll also want to be sure there's a smooth side on the head of the ghost if you're going to add a face. I realized that because some of my doilies only had lace around the edge of the doily, if it was pooled at the bottom, you wouldn't be able to see the lace that well, especially if I had them on a higher shelf. So I decided to make some of the ghosts be hanging ghosts. This worked well for the tiny doilies I had. I just used jars that were taller than the doilies so they would hang and not pool at the bottom at all. The doilies will need to dry overnight. Some of the thicker doilies took a little longer than that to dry out, just where the fabric was pooled and thicker. Once they're dry, the fabric will be stiff and you can remove the ghosts from the jar. For the eyes and mouth, I'm using adhesive felt. That way it's removable if you want to rinse out the ghosts to get your doilies back. When I made the cheesecloth ghost, I used a Sharpie to draw on the face, and I liked how that looked. It was a little more faded. But I wanted to be able to take these off in case I ever want the doilies for something else. You can cut the eyes and mouth shapes from the felt, or I discovered that a hole punch works easily with this felt. and it was much easier, plus it made smaller eyes, which I liked better. And I have 2 different size hole punches that I used. To hang my ghosts, I used fishing line just so they would look a little bit more like they were floating. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing here with the clear fishing line. To hang the fabric doilies, I used a needle to put a hole in the top of the ghost head. Then I was able to stick both ends of a piece of fishing line through the hole. I pulled them through to create a loop at the top of the ghost and stuck my scissors through that loop just to hold it in place while I tied off the other ends. I tied the ends into a knot, knotting it off 3 times just to be sure it was big enough to not go back through the hole at the top. Then you just pull the loop at the top and you have a loop for hanging. The doilies that are all lace are much easier to do. I threaded the line through a needle and then just stuck that through the holes in the lace and then tied that off. And that's how to create doily ghosts. So simple and such a sweet little addition to your Halloween decor.